Hey YouTube, welcome back to the VAT USA YouTube channel. My name's Nick and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager for VAT USA. Earlier in the week, I sat down with Mr. Manny Manigold, VAT USA 1, the Division Director. We went over 2021 as well as an outlook for 2022. Let's take a look. We'd like to welcome Mr. Manny, VAT USA 1, back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel, Manny. Hope you had a happy new year. Let's just go ahead and start with a recap on 2021.
Well, thank you, Nick, and hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I'm optimistically looking forward to a happy and productive 2022. Looking backwards on 2021, we have continued to experience unprecedented growth, both in our designated airfield traffic and year-over-year controlling hours. The Focus 30 designated airfields traffic increased year-over-year by 24%. And our year-over-year controlling hour growth was 8%. And taking a look at a monthly chart, since September 2020, which coincidentally was when I started as division director, but it's unrelated, we have been in an uptrend in both designated airfield traffic and in controlling hours. Looking at where the growth is predominantly in the Northeast region. New York, Boston, and Washington led the way in the Northeast with growth, and Atlanta was also in the top 4, as well as LA rounded out the top 5. When we look at the RTEX by controlling hours growth, Salt Lake City ZLC doubled their controlling hour growth year over year. Boston and New York had very strong growth, and Memphis was in 4th place. They had very strong growth, as well as Chicago, and that rounded out the top 5. Earlier this week, I posted the top 25 positions in uptime, and Boston was well represented in there. They placed 4 times in the top 20 at Boston, and if you include Bradley, they were in the top 25 5 times. So 20% of the top 25 positions are represented in ZBW. One thing that I noticed last year was that even though we experienced a lot of growth in our controlling population, our observer population, for example, grew by 85%. Our S1 population grew by 35% year over year, S2 19%, S3 31%, and C1 population 8%. And my apologies, this is from March 2020, the start of the pandemic, roughly to December 2021. So observers, that population grew by 85%, but we're not seeing the throughput into actual S1s, S2s, S3s, and C1s. And that tells me that our training department is being severely overwhelmed by the number of new members, and they're struggling to keep up with demand. And so we have to find a way in 2022 to improve on that so that we can have more members controlling on the network. And most importantly, we have to improve our S3 and C1 population. Since we're a top-down network, we need those S3s, new S3s, and new C1s to fully contribute on the network.
Thanks, Manny. So when we're talking about training and the throughput, what ideas do you have, which will lead us into our next question, for a 2022 outlook? Any ideas or goals that you have to sort of address these training backlogs, if you will, and just in general for the division?
Well, I'm in the process of brainstorming with Anthony and Wes on just that question. Right now, I don't have much to share with you on that. In a perfect world, we would be able to start a full-fledged academy and take on the Observer to S1 training ourselves on demand via the web. But we tried that back in 2007, 2008, didn't go over very well. We didn't have enough resources to pull that off. And we're still in the same place where we wouldn't have enough resources to pull that off. So we have to find a way to leverage ARTCC resources and divisional resources to increase that throughput. How we're going to do that, I'm not exactly sure, with the exception that in August, we launched our VAT USA Academy. I'm hopeful that the Academy will prove to be an effective gate to at least weed out members who initially feel virtual controlling for them, but they find out that there's a lot of demands placed on the member to self-learn, find the answers for themselves, be able to interpret SOPs, perform under pressure. Believe it or not, even though this is a virtual environment, it is a simulated environment. And so for someone who's not used to controlling in the real world or being a professional pilot, there is some stress introduced when you're trying to control virtual airplanes in a safe manner. And hopefully the Academy will prove to weed out those people up front so that the ARTCCs will not feel the brunt of having to work not only with increased numbers, but with unprepared members. One idea that we are considering is a way of perhaps load balancing the initial ARTCC selection. By far, New York and Los Angeles are the most popular places in VAT USA for new members to go. And they're the ones that have some of the largest membership, and they're also experiencing some of the highest backlogs. Well, we have another 19 RTECs, and ratings training is ratings training is ratings training. And you could get your ratings training, or you should be able to get your ratings training at any RTEC and not see huge variability in the quality of that training. So we're considering creating some sort of load balancing idea. Perhaps the new member could pick their top 3 RTECs they want to go to, and then we take a look. And if their number 1 choice is full, then perhaps we'll give them their number 2 choice. If the number 2 choice is over capacity, number 3 choice. And hopefully spread the wealth and the load amongst the 21 RTECs.
Okay, thanks, Manny. So just a follow-up to that, what's your plan to address any concerns that a user might have that, oh, I can't get into my preferred or second preferred RTEC, and the third one I just put there because, I have to fill the spot?
Well, we can also use a visiting controller policy effectively. And so if a controller really wants to go over to, say, Atlanta, but Atlanta's full of, they're over capacity in terms of ratings training, the new member could perhaps get their ratings training at one of the smaller RTECs, but then they could visit Atlanta, and Atlanta would no longer be responsible for the ratings training. So Atlanta could drill down right into the Hartsfield training or the Charlotte training, and that would be the best of both worlds. That's how I'm picturing it. But once again, this is all speculation. These aren't firm plans. We haven't discussed it yet. We haven't drilled down to see what the risks are. It's just right now an idea, a concept.
So to follow on to that question, let's go ahead and see, do you have any further goals for the division for 2022?
Yes, I was on the GCAP committee in 2021, and when we had a change of leadership, congratulations to Tim Barber on being VATGov 1. Tim decided to place a hold on GCAP pending some other priorities, such as hiring VATGov 2. So congratulations to Don for being selected as VATGov 2. I'm hopeful that the GCAP work will commence again in 2022, and I'm hopeful that that SIM on the network level will clarify how they see the network, what their goals are for the network on a network level, and that will inform the decisions I have to make on the division level, and then we could cascade that message down all the way to the RTAC and new member level. I think some of the difficulties that we're experiencing within VAT USA has to do with the goals not being quite in alignment, or perhaps the goals not being clearly communicated. For instance, on my level as division director, my focus is on coverage, is on increasing virtual controller uptime in order to meet the demand of the online pilots. Well, from my level as division director, that looks a lot different than an ATM's view of that, or perhaps a controller's view of that. And from the networks level, juggling all of the different divisions, that of course looks a lot different. And at times, I feel our views aren't quite in alignment. And that ends up giving the impression to an ATM and RTAC, a division, that the overlying level is not in tune with the struggles of the underlying level. And I hope in 2022 I can do a better job, ZHQ can do a better job, the network can do a better job of making sure that all of our points of view are in perfect alignment so that we don't have a lot of waste in energy and effort, and we could focus our attention on the same things no matter how that appears on our particular level, and we could get a better result.
So let's go on to the next question then. And this one kind of ties back into what we were just talking about, but it specifically came from one of the members on the social media team, and they thought it would be a good one to ask you. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. And that's, we're starting to see some animosity between pilots and controllers. And the question to you is what do you think can be done here? How can we overcome this and come together as a community?
I feel that this pilot community manager position is key. And the reason why I say that is because pilots don't know what controllers expect of them, and and pilots don't understand, new pilots, the potential consequence of their actions on the controller. They're just concentrating on their little tiny bubble, of course. The controller, if they're controlling en route top down, well, they have a span of perhaps 600 by 400 miles in some of these territories. And so that could easily wreck a whole chunk of that airspace just because of the pilot, depending on how dense the traffic is. And so with this pilot community manager, hopefully he or she will, in this case Brandon, so he will be able to be an effective liaison between the controller community and what the controller community is expecting from the pilot community. And of course, the pilots run into inexperienced controllers too. It's not all one-sided. And so there have been times when even I've been flying, the pilot gives a late vector, the pilot gives a late command. I'm blowing through the localizer, all of a sudden I'm having to go set up for another runway and all, and I'm in, juggling through the complex pilot programs to get properly set up again. So it happens on both sides. So the pilot community manager could then cascade those messages over to the controlling community, and the more we communicate with each other, the better off we are. the more we have the pilot community feel welcomed, and have a more captive audience, if you will, then I think the better off we will all be. Once again, a lot of new pilots should take advantage of the various different programs that are available to them to learn more about flying their aircraft. You don't have to immediately jump into an event level environment. In my mind, events are like pro games. Business as usual throughout the day on a Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever, that's your practice time. You can get up on the network, you can practice, do what you want. But if you want to fly and cross the pond, or you want to fly in, one of the very, very busy events, FNOs or whatever, you should be on your game, because the controllers are controlling at times level of traffic that even the real world counterparts are not managing. And so in that type of environment, you've got to be dead on your game. Everyone's got to be on their game and do things pretty much flawlessly right, or things are going to quickly fall apart. So I would encourage tolerance. I'm a pilot and I'm a controller, and I'm putting time in both sides so that I can have empathy for both sides. And I'm not sure how many of our controllers just control only and never be a pilot, so they may not see things from the pilot's point of view. And I'm not sure how many pilots bother to control, but it's a much smaller number on that side. And so I would encourage pilots to become controllers. We need you on the controlling level. And I would encourage our controllers perhaps to be a pilot every once in a while. And so you see things from the other side, and perhaps you increase your tolerance.
Well, thanks, Manny. I think we've got one more question for you, and this is kind of the fun one that we have when we do these from the desk videos. And that would be, what are you most excited for this year? Maybe the PMGG 737, the Aerosoft Twin Otter, VATSIM Velocity, or maybe it's something in your personal life. What are you excited for in 2022?
Well, I am excited about VATSIM Velocity. I haven't participated in the pilot program, but I know that will please controllers and pilots alike to be able to see everything render quickly on the network. I'm also looking forward to the day, hopefully, when the Pilatus PC-12 will come to MS 2020. I love the aircraft. The aircraft is not available in MS 2020 now, but so right now I'm flying a lot of TBM flights, but I would love to go back to the Pilatus aircraft. And I am looking forward on ZHQ level to continuing to increase the lines of communications between ZHQ and the RTEC community and the network community, and strengthen the ties of community to where we're all working together and not at odds with each other, and we're all on the same page to make this a more effective network. I don't think the growth in members and on the controlling or piloting side, I don't think that's going to go away, because I think we're just at the start as MS 2020 matures. It's going to attract even more members. X-Plane's coming out with a new version, X-Plane 12 at some point. That's going to attract new members. And we're going to have to learn to adapt to work with the increased levels of traffic, and that's fun. That shouldn't be a burden. The streamers shouldn't be a burden. Bring it on, but we just got to have more members to meet the demand. And we also have to keep in mind that we're not the only network in town. We have some competing networks. More competing networks are coming online or are due to come online. And that too is a good thing. That's not a threat. That's a good thing. because the more networks we have, the more we can attract new members and become less of a niche community, more of a mainstream community. That's going to be good for everyone. This is an enormous pie, and there's enough room for everyone.
Okay, well, just looking through my notes here, it doesn't look like we've got anything else to cover. So thanks so much for joining us, Manny. And we'll hope to have you back here at least one more time during 2022.
Well, thank you very much for having me on at the beginning of the year. I want to thank everyone for their contributions to the network. However little, however large your contribution is, it all helps. I look forward to being online in a controlling capacity more this year so that I can interface with my fellow controllers in the Discords and the TeamSpeaks on the scope and do my part to strengthen the community and to cascade messages in both directions for the good of the network at large.
Awesome. Well, once again, Manny, thank you so much for joining us again here on the channel. And we hope you have a pleasant 2022. Looking forward to all of these great things coming from the division. And I know that we'll have an upcoming episode with a new pilot, community manager, whatever his title is going to be, Brandon. Again, thanks a lot, Manny. And we'll catch you around next time.
Talk soon.